Hi, and welcome back. Are you thinking of starting traveling and one of the things that you are wanting to do is sell your house before you leave or maybe after you leave, but you're not exactly sure how the process works? Well, I have sold in the last year two different houses, and both times I was traveling. So I wanted to just kind of give my story about how that all worked and how it went down so that hopefully it will be helpful to you if you're kind of on the fence as to what to do as far as the timeline and procedure for selling your house if you're thinking of selling and going to travel full time. If you're new here, my name is Kyria, and I've been traveling for over 26 years, and I've been to over 60 countries now. And so I've learned a lot from my own mistakes. And so hopefully, by giving you information, you don't have to make the same mistakes as I have. So I'll start off with my first house, which was my house I was living in. And just a little background, this is in the San Francisco Bay Area. And the market at the time that I sold was a little bit questionable because the rates were a little bit high. So this was basically um, May of 2024. So the mortgage rates were around the 6 or 7% range. And so not a lot of people were actually moving out because they didn't want to lose their old lower mortgage rate and have to move into a place with a higher mortgage rate. So unfortunately, what that meant for me is there wasn't necessarily a lot of demand. But the other part of that is that there wasn't really a lot of supply either because not a lot of people were moving out. So there wasn't a lot of supply, empty houses from people moving out. So I wasn't really sure, to be honest, how it was going to go as far as the success or timing of getting it all done in a quick manner. And luckily, I also had a really good realtor, and he did a lot of the things for me. So, just so you know, when I bought my house, it was a 21-day escrow. So, that's kind of pretty common in the area. Also, the other thing that's quite common is to have no contingencies. So, usually in our area, the seller does all the inspections and provides the disclosures, and the buyer just reviews that before they make the offer. And of course, they can go in and have more inspections done if they want to. But a lot of times, because it is a very quick moving market, as a buyer, you don't necessarily have the luxury of being picky. So when I bought, for instance, I waived all contingencies. I did a 21-day escrow, and I offered higher than the actual listing price. Now, this was 10 years later now, and I wasn't really sure if it was going to be a buyer's market or a seller's market. So when I bought, it was a seller's market, of course. And when I sold, it was kind of questionable as to whether it was a buyer's market or a seller's market. It was kind of somewhere in the middle. So like I said, I wasn't really sure what to expect, but thank goodness I had a good realtor. He was very realistic with me, and I'm a very realistic person anyway. I don't really need to be sugar coated, or I just want the facts. You tell me what the facts are, and we can move on from there. And also, he not only was very realistic, but he also was very helpful. He had a lot of good contacts as far as handymen and things like that. So what I did was basically I cleaned out my entire house. Well, let me back up just a little bit. Before I knew I was going to quit my job and travel, I had him come a few months before that. He looked at everything, and what my goal was to see from him is, would it make sense for me to do a lot of prep work beforehand? For instance, painting the house or fixing anything up. And he said basically the answer to that was no. The best thing would be for me to empty everything out, and he could paint it and do all that stuff once the house was empty. And he would fix up the yard anyway as part of the staging, and he would have a stager come in and all of that stuff. So that was great. So I basically just got rid of all my stuff, and I quit my job on the 15th. And on the 17th, I left the house completely empty with the keys in a little hiding spot for him. And he took over from there. So he had the people come in and paint the inside, the outside, handymen come and do a few little fixes, those things that the realtors like to do, like changing the, appliances from gold to silver or whatnot. I just kind of let him have free reign of that, to be honest. And he did the front yard and backyard. And also, he had the stager come in. But the other thing that we have to do in the Bay Area is we have a sewer compliance rule. So the seller has to make sure the sewer lateral is compliant with the current codes and standards of the county, which is kind of a pain because when I bought the house, it was in compliance, but of course they changed the compliance rules. And then when I sold, I had to do stuff to make it compliant 10 years later. So it almost works out to, depending on how long you own the house, you're probably going to have to upgrade it if you're the seller when you move out, because they keep changing the rules. And that's not a cheap thing. It can cost anywhere from, let's say, $8,000 to $15,000, depending on what they have to do, because it goes out into the main and the street. Anyway, I won't get into all that, but he basically coordinated all of that stuff for me, which was great. So thank goodness to him, hats off to him. He made the process a lot easier because as soon as I left, I started riding my bike across the country. So, and in case you aren't familiar, I rode my bike across the US and Canada. So of course, he put the house on the market and we got some offers. We talked about the offers. I accepted one of the offers and I was in Canada at the time. And in case you're unfamiliar, if you are doing a closing, depending on what state you live in, sometimes you can do kind of a video call where you sign a document in front of a person who, is watching on the video. In California, that's not available. And so if you're not in the state, you actually, well, if you're not in the country, not the state. So you don't have to be in California. You have to be in the country of the US in order to get a notary. Then you need to either go to the embassy or you need to be in the country. So at the time when we were about to close, I was actually in Canada. And so what I did for this one is I actually rode my bike. I was on a trajectory across Canada. I ended up riding my bike down to Washington and just crossing over the border and going to the smallest little border town and having a notary meet me there. The good thing is the notary will meet you pretty much anywhere, which I didn't really realize this, I guess, beforehand, even though when I bought my house, they came to my house and we did all the signing. And I refinanced and they came to my house and we did all the signing. But I guess I just considered that they would come locally, but they'll pretty much go anywhere. So I had a lady meet me for breakfast and coffee, and we signed all the paperwork, and she left, and we were all good to go. So it did require a little bit of planning on my part, especially since I was on a bike and I had to go across a border and then back across the border into Canada. So that's something you'll have to think about if you're selling. The process was very quick. It took me an hour to sign all the papers, and basically then after that, the notary gave me a copy of all the papers, which was kind of funny because I was on my bike and then I had this big thick sheaf of papers. But then she basically sent it back to the title company. They processed it, and a couple days later, it was wired to my account. The other thing I forgot to mention is this escrow was 17 days. So it was really short, which as the seller is better for me. I'd rather have it go faster so we can get it over with. Once we actually showed the house and we set a date for the offers that they had to be in. And so that was a few days later, and then I accepted, and then 17 days later I was done. So that actually went pretty smoothly, aside from the fact that I had to coordinate riding my bike to a place across the border where there's only a few border crossings. But again, not that difficult overall. So easier than I had thought it was going to be. The second one was more recently, and I happened to be in the country of Georgia. And so when you're not in the country, you have to go to the US Embassy. So with this one, put it on the market, got the offer, and basically the problem is in this embassy specifically, and I can't speak to all the embassies, but in Tbilisi, the embassy only allows notarizations once a week on one time slot. So there was only Monday at 2 p.m. and they only allowed 3 different slots. So you only had an option for 3 different slots. So they only had 3 available slots for each week, basically. So as soon as I got the offer, which was a 30-day escrow in this case, I basically started trying to figure out, okay, well, when do I need to make this notary appointment? Is it at the very end? Is it right now? What's the timing on that? So basically the title company said the earlier the better. So I booked the first available one. So my closing was scheduled for the 26th of June. I ended up booking, since it was only Mondays, the 16th of June. And the other thing, which was a little bit difficult here, is that the way that it works is you actually have to print out the papers, take them into the notary, have them sign them, and then you send them back to the US. So let me go over each of those steps. The first one is that you have to print out the documents. Now, this one was actually a lot different than I thought because of the last time when I had this big sheaf of documents, I thought I was going to have this huge packet of documents coming my way that I was going to have to print out in a foreign country, carry around, take into the notary, and then send also in a big packet back home. Now, this is not the case. A lot of those documents can actually be docu-signed. There's only a few specific ones that have a wet signature, an actual real signature, and a notary, or a notarization. So luckily for me, there were only 3 documents that needed to be notarized. And these documents were a few pages each. You do have to print out the entire document. So even if you have a 50-page document and only 1 page needs to be notarized, you have to print out all 50 pages, take them all in to the notary. They'll notarize the 1 page, and then you have to send all the pages back. So you do have to print out everything so the notary can look at the entire document, not just the page that they're signing. So just keep that in mind. But for me, luckily, each of those were only a few pages long, so I printed out the 9 pages. But of course, this is a little bit different when you're in a country that A, the language is different, and B, the writing is different. So it's hard to find, where do you even go to print? And of course, we're in a day and age when you're used to kind of having a printer at home or whatever thing that you normally do, or not even needing to print anything out very often. So this was kind of a first for me. So what you have to do is you can either usually email the documents, or what I did was I took mine in, I put them on a memory card, and I have like a USB jack that I would put, actually I have it right here. So the memory card goes in there and you can just stick it into a computer. So I have this for my camera, but luckily in this case, I just put them on here, but then I also put the documents in an email in case I was going to need to email them, because some places you just email them to them. Personally, I don't really like emailing them because then the company has my documents permanently. I'd rather give them something temporary that they can just print it out. So I went in and I had them use that USB port to do it. And it cost me basically, I think it was basically 2 lari for all 9 pages, which is essentially about 80 cents. So after doing that, I had to go to my Monday appointment at the embassy. Now, this was an interesting thing. So you go in and you go into the first building, which has security in it. And essentially what they do is they take everything from you. They took my watch. They wouldn't let me keep my watch. They took my phone. They made me power it down, and they took it. I also was carrying around my GoPro because I was filming as I was going there. So they took my GoPro. They took my Kindle. What else did I have? Anyway, they'll basically take all of your electronics from you and give you a little tag that you can come back and get the electronics back when you're done. Then you go through security, through an actual scanner and everything. And so I would say if you're going, don't bring a lot of stuff, just bring what you absolutely only need. So I went through the security, I gave them all my electronics, and then you go into a separate building where you wait for an attendant. Now in this case, I think they were short-staffed or something because it took a really long time. I mean, it felt like a long time. It was probably 20 minutes before an attendant finally came out, and I had one couple in front of me, so she helped them first, and then she helped me. For me, all it is they basically make you pay first. Oh, it's also $50 per notarized page. So I had to pay $150 for my 3 different notarized pages. So you pay her, and then you go sit in a different waiting room to wait for the notary. So the first lady is just the cashier, and then the second person is the notary. So I probably waited another 20 minutes at least, maybe 30 minutes for the notary. And then basically you get called up to a desk, which it's just like when you go to the DMV or whatever. So you get called up to a desk, she reviews all the papers with you, you sit and sign it in front of her, she stamps it, she gives them back to you, and you're done. So really the actual notarization of it didn't take very long. It was more waiting around. So I would say all in all, from the time I walked in the door to the time I walked out, was roughly about an hour or an hour and 15 minutes total. Now, the weird thing is that I actually made the appointment. They only had available appointments for 2 o'clock, but I happened to get there really early because I was kind of nervous about being late. So I got there at about 1 o'clock. And I thought, I'm just going to go see if the guy will let me in a little early or if I should go wait or what should I do. And he said, no, your appointment's at 1. So I'm not really sure what happened there. But I would say just be early. And if they let you in early, great. And if they don't, it's better to wait than to have something go wrong. And I was really nervous about something going wrong because if something went wrong that Monday, my next Monday was going to be the 23rd and my closing was the 26th. And there was no way I was going to get the documents back in time if I didn't do the 16th. So luckily it all went smoothly. My next thing was to get that in the mail as fast as possible. So I need to look at my notes here. The problem with the shipping was basically they did have FedEx, but there's no actual FedEx office. They're all like little third-party mail centers. And then they did have DHL, and in that case, there was only one office, and that one was a DHL office. So I decided, based on the reviews of all the little mail centers, which were not good, that I would use DHL. So basically, I went to the DHL, and they told me that, oh, let me back up. Because of the language barrier, I always like to check beforehand. So I actually had gone to the DHL a few days before to find out what the cost was going to be and how many days it was going to take. And they told me it was basically going to cost about $125 and it was going to be 3 to 4 business days, which I thought, okay, that's good. So when I got there that day after I went to the notary, I went into the DHL and they told me actually, because the location that I was sending it to was not in a large city, it was going to cost me extra. So it ended up being about $150. And they also said it was going to be 5 to 6 business days. So because that was a Monday, I had the weekend. So that would mean it would either get there the next Monday or the next Tuesday. In the end, it actually got there on the 24th. So it ended up taking 8 total days. So basically 7 business days. So just be aware that it's not going to be as fast as you're used to with a quote unquote overnight shipping. So that's what I paid for, is overnight shipping. But overnight shipping from abroad isn't always the same as overnight shipping from home. So just be aware of that. Luckily, it did get there on time and there was no issues. But I was very paranoid that something was going to go wrong and then having to correct it would take a long time. So hopefully this helps you if you're thinking about doing this, to kind of give you a little information and maybe peace of mind. I don't know, because it was easier than I thought it was going to be, but I really didn't expect it to go smoothly, to be honest. So it went more smoothly than I thought it was going to. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'm happy to answer any. And if there's any that need more of a explanation, I can go into more detail. But I thought I would just kind of talk a little bit mostly about the paperwork part of it instead of the whole home selling process. So let me know if you have any questions. And once again, thank you very much for watching and happy travels. Once we actually showed the house, in one day, and then the next time you would have to go. So the first one, you have